Okay, here we are again for... How many episodes have I done? I wrote it like 2 seconds ago and I forgot. Okay, episode 84. 84 live streams. And that wind, I don't know if any of you can hear that wind, but boy, is it frightening. Boy, oh boy. So... And my allergies are kicking up something stupid. Let me tell you. Okay, is my mic on? Yeah, my mic's on. Good. Good. So let's see. There we go. Up from the depths, 30 stories high. I'm not drawing that design, but it's pretty fly. Godzilla! So, speaking of which... This is NECA's King Goji action figure, 1962. Let me see if I can get it on the other camera. This isn't really doing it justice. Let's see. Let's futz around with the camera when I should be drawing, because that's exactly what I should be doing. Alright, there we go. Alright, there we go. I mean, look at him. Look at this gorgeous frog-faced galoot. And let me bring down the brightness so that this way it doesn't affect the frame rate. So I'm always funny about frame rate. For whatever reason, I see that that something is kind of a little out of whack. I go nuts. So unlike previous Drezen Draws episodes, where I use model sheets or whatever to reference, I am going to be using this action figure right here. Now I'm trying to prop him up in a way that. Thank you, Brian. Oh yeah, you were commenting on when I posted the voting. You asked some really good questions, so I greatly appreciate that. Oh, I just moved the pose that I was going to use. And it's not like I'm going to have this thing in my hand the whole time anyway, or am I? I don't know. I'm just kind of flying by the seat of my pants here. This is what. You know, this is what I go through every week. I have not seen the Netflix Godzilla, which stars Godzilla Earth, but it looks kind of interesting. A close friend of mine who I should have reminded that I was doing this. I said, yeah. Would you be interested in co-hosting this with me? And then I just kind of got distracted and I forgot to ask him. So. Super, I apologize in advance. So this one is for you. Now let's get the music going, because we have music on here, which is provided by through subscription epidemicsound.com. There's a lot of great music on there, and it's great for live streaming. Wait a minute, something wrong here. There we go. Okay. You guys hear the music? Yeah, cool. Alright. So, I drew Godzilla extensively over a period of about maybe 2.5 months, because I do a webcomic called LuckyZilla. And LuckyZilla is self-published by me, myself. And I've been publishing it for close to 5 years now, though the character's origins date back 25 years as of this year. Let me bring him in a little bit. Let me see if I can get myself actually studying the dude. Yeah, there we go. I'm gonna be, like I said, this is live, so I'm gonna be flubbing like crazy. There's no editing. You know, anything goes. Yeah. I can imagine. That seems to be a running trope with almost every Godzilla movie ever made. You know, it's like, the movie's great and all, but it kind of needs more Godzilla. At least that's what the main complaint of the 2014 film was. And it was great and all, it was a solid reboot, but it needed more Godzilla. In terms of, from my experience of drawing Godzilla, the things that prove to be the most challenging are definitely the face, and also depending on which iteration of the character you're drawing. Because at the time when I drew Godzilla vs. Luckyzilla, which is still available on luckyzilla.com to view. And it's gonna be there for free because I'm not selling copies of it. I don't want to try to compete with the actual, the official releases, as it were. I'm not like that. But, I studied the '94. Godzilla vs. Bambi. Yeah, I mean, I think if you haven't seen Godzilla vs. Bambi, you've been living under a rock. Yeah, that was on the Godzilla 1985 VHS tape. That I watched when I was about 12, I think. Might have been 12 or 13, I don't remember. I just remember that I saw it. I rented it from TNF Video, which was not too far down the block from me, from where I grew up. I don't know, I'm not crazy about this angle. So this is gonna be one of those times where I just turf what I got and start over. Okay, I think one of the most challenging things about drawing Kingu Goji, which I've actually drawn before, just not live, is the fact that he has no ears. I mean, the Godzilla that I'm most familiar with has ears. I'd say my favorite suit out of all of them is the 64 suit, and I have the NECA figure of that. It turned out a lot better than I expected that it would, because when I saw the first few pictures of it, I wasn't really impressed. I'm like, that's not the 64 suit. I mean, unless I'm smoking crack or something, you know. I mean, I don't know. I just didn't really connect with it. I'll make sure that I don't bring the mouth back too far. It's not like this is Tim Burton's Godzilla up in here, because you gotta examine where the jaw is, and if it doesn't connect with the rest of the head, then you're kind of in trouble. So there's a lot that's symmetrical in each of the great Godzilla designs. I would not call to any extent King Goji my favorite, or anywhere near my favorite Godzilla suit. In fact, I think it's one of the worst, but I gotta give credit to NECA for making a stunning figure, which, you know, quite honestly, I wanted it. I mean, I'll be perfectly honest. I want a 67 figure. I want a 67 figure. I know it's ugly as hell. It's by far, I think, the worst of the Godzilla suits, but, you know, if you want to call yourself a completist, you know, you got to take the good with the bad. So let's be real. But it's interesting because, you know, I look at King Goji and I also see some of Mosu Goji, which is Godzilla vs. Mothra. And I mean, that they just got everything right about that suit. You know, I mean, he's menacing. He's not quite the 54 Godzilla, but he doesn't have to be. You know, they still got a lot of the menace about him, which is very important, because if Godzilla isn't the least bit intimidating, you know, what good is he as the film's protagonist, or even the antagonist, if you will, which he is in the first handful of films up to Ghidra, the three-headed monster. When I was really young, Friday and Saturday nights on our local television station was monster movies and kung fu flicks. So I would stay up until 4 a.m. watching Godzilla, King Kong, and martial arts flicks. Good time. Oh yeah, that's my father had seen Godzilla, King of the Monsters, the Raymond Burr version, when he was a kid, around 1960. I think he had gone with his dad to the movies when his dad was off from his store one day, and then he'd watch the stuff on TV. And he was up late one night, he couldn't sleep, or whatever the reason was that he was up late, and I saw what was on the TV, and it kind of freaked me out. I'm like, what is this? He's like, it's Godzilla. I'm like, Godzilla? That sounds horrible. And I'm like, and he's like, come on. And then you got to get back to bed. So I'm watching the last, I want to say the last 10 minutes of it. The one with Serizawa and Ogata go into the water to ultimately, spoiler alert, do the guy in. So it kind of scared the bejesus out of me. Not even so much the monster, but the fact of what they did to the monster, reducing him to a skeleton. And then Godzilla vs. Mothra comes on, like, right afterwards. You know, the way that my father said the name of the movie, he's like, oh, Godzilla vs. Mothra. I couldn't tell whether or not that was a good thing or a bad thing, so I'm just like, alright, whatever, Dad. But I caught the first 20 minutes or so, and I kind of was like really digging it. And I was in 5th grade. I wasn't thinking about Godzilla again for quite a while. It was a schoolmate of mine, Rennie Rondinella. Never forget that name. How could you forget a name like that? That's Rennie Rondinella. I wonder, Rennie? Like Ren and Stimpy? Yeah, he was a good guy. Huge Godzilla fan. Had a bunch of toys, had the movies. I learned a great deal from him about Godzilla, and it kind of sort of led to the creation of Lucky-Zilla, which this year celebrates 25 years since its creation. And Lucky-Zilla is nothing like Godzilla. There's nothing left to Goji but suffix of the name. The thing that's been throwing me off as I'm drawing this Goji is that he's not bulky like the first suit or like some of the other suits that followed. At least in the body cavity, you know, that'll throw you off because the head is much wider. You know, a lot of the elements from this suit were put to use in the 64 suit. I mean, for one thing, if you shave off the cheeks, if you slim down the cheeks, you got the 64 head. Plus, you know, you do a little bit of dental work. Although, I will say that this Goji suit is much more muscular than the 64 suit. Not that the 64 suit isn't muscular. It is, but this is just a little different. Kind of got to round out his shoulders a little bit. And Godzilla's arms kind of begin sort of like right down here. I mean, you could call it a design flaw if you wanted, but then again, you also have to keep in mind where the suit actor's head was, which was right here. And therefore, if your head is right here, where are, you know, the arms going to go? Well, there you go. There are a handful of artists that have drawn Godzilla for comics that have been very adamant about how they execute their work. One guy in particular, I can't remember his name, but he says he uses the 94 NECA figure, and any pose he cannot get that figure to do, he just doesn't do it. Let's see. Now we gotta look at the hands. Okay. Hands are a big pain in the whatchamacallit to draw. And giant monsters are no different because, let's face it, you know, even they don't know what created them half the time. So the last thing they're focusing on is their anatomy. They're animals. They're surviving. You see now. And I mean, I work almost exclusively digital for reasons like what you just saw me do. Excuse me. My asthma is kicking up like a, you know. Yeah. Let's see now. I might actually draw the hands just a little bit larger and just attach them so that this way I'm not spending a crazy amount of time on them. You want to get the base, certainly, you know, and you got to factor in where the thumb is going to be. And the thumb is 9 times out of 10 going to be about half the length of the hand. Curious about the upcoming Kong vs. Godzilla film. I hope it has plenty of action. I was rather pleased with Godzilla King of the Monsters. It was a good sequel to the 2014 film. Absolutely, I couldn't agree more. I honestly will go so far as to say that the sequel, Godzilla King of the Monsters, is one of my all-time favorite Godzilla films. It was just done so well and with so much love that, you know, I couldn't be more grateful to have that film in a franchise that I love as much as I do. You know, because it's fun. It's just so much fun. That's a key word about these films. They're made to entertain. You know, I mean, the series started with being an allegory for one of the most unfortunate events of human history. The droppings of the atomic bombs. You know, it was wartime. You know, and I mean, Japan, being that they experienced nuclear damage firsthand, I mean, you know, the fact that a film like this came into being is almost no accident. It is pretty potent. I gotta shorten this arm a little bit. It's just a little too long, and I gotta kind of even this out. A friend of mine, Pete Vasquez, who has also contributed art to Luckyzilla, advice that he gives artists starting out is, at least a piece of it is, learn your anatomy. You gotta learn your anatomy. So without learning your anatomy, you're basically sunk. Everything you draw is gonna look the same, no matter what, and you're never gonna improve. So I did an interview shortly before this stream with my good friend Kelly Gordon, who is the communications director of the East Meadow Public Library here on Long Island, and he's also one of my cover artists on Luckyzilla number 10, which is available at luckyzilla.com. And trying to think of where I was going with that. I talk too much. That's another reason why I have music on this show, because there are going to be times where I have absolutely nothing to say. So I gotta kind of, offset that a little bit wherever possible. Oh, now I remember what I was saying. He had asked me, the process of which I go about creating stuff, and why I came to do this particular show, Drezen Draws, and I had thought about rebranding myself from Rich Drezen Productions to something else, and I had reviewed my work up to that point, and I was very proud of it, but I couldn't escape the fact that a lot of my stuff was not getting any better than it was. It was just kind of there. It kind of served its purpose, and okay, what's next? So I decided I wanted to challenge myself a lot more, but I didn't really know how to go about it. I didn't know anything about live streaming, although I have been doing live videos for quite a while, since discovering Periscope, and eventually Facebook's live feature, and even going live on YouTube. That I was ready to experiment a little bit. Now the tail. The tail is usually the most interesting part of Godzilla, and I say that with a certain degree of awe and a certain degree of ugh. So let's see. I'm gonna measure this with my hand a little bit. I would say that the tail, an effective Godzilla tail, is about 1.5 times Godzilla's height. And that, of course, depends on the angle of which you're drawing the tail. Or, let me rephrase that. It depends on which direction the tail is pointing. I mean, in this case, I might just have it pointing up. I don't know. I don't know what I want to do with the tail yet. Because I can't start drawing the spikes until I have the tail in place. I used to draw a lot, and I stopped for years. I'm trying to get back to where I was. Yeah, I mean, there was a time in my adult life where I didn't draw or animate for about... I didn't draw for about, I don't know, a month, and I didn't animate anything for about 6 months. And when I got back into it, I was just like, wow, I feel like I lost nothing. Although, of course, there were other times where I found myself in that situation. I'm like, I'll be back in, maybe a month or two. And then 3 months later, I was just like, I have no idea what I'm doing. Yeah. I gotta bulk up the tail a little bit. I mean, not so much that, I kind of confuse it for a Mothra larva. But, Alright, I mean, so far, I'm kind of satisfied with the direction I'm going in. Gonna bulk up the neck just a little bit so that the proportions kind of make sense. One of the more interesting things about the physique of Godzilla are the scales. Now, this was something that was taken into consideration throughout designing the monster's initial look in 1954. It's one of the reasons why I wish I kept the classic media DVD. Thank you, Brian. Yeah, so far I'm satisfied. I could definitely live with this, but most importantly, I need to save, because if you don't and something happens, it's gonna be a bad day. So let's see now. Godzilla's suit design was trial and error, like, right from the frickin' get-go. It's on the classic media DVD release. You gotta see it. It blew my mind the first time I saw the thing, like just how many design changes there were, and the scales were warty at first, and then they slimmed them down to where, what we see in the final version. I don't like the way those dorsal fins look. When I was determining which version of Godzilla I would adapt for my webcomic version, I wanted to use the 55 suit as reference, but I couldn't find enough good material on it, and getting a figure of the 55 suit is, or at least was, not financially viable. I mean, what appears to be the best available figure of the 55 suit is the X Plus version, and that's over $200. In some cases, depending on the vendor, it can be over $300. I am not spending that kind of money. So, yeah. We got too many rows of fins. Okay. Alright. Just don't forget, you know, I mean, you're just looking at the rough. I gotta go over this, you know, and ink this crap, so... What I'm gonna do first is I'm gonna do the sides. The exoskeleton, as it were. And this is probably gonna be the most challenging part, but I almost think of it as, you know, I'm kind of drawing his gums, as it were. His exterior gums. Because when I'm going through and I'm trying to plot out where the spikes are gonna be, you know, I can determine whether or not it's gonna make sense to have them there from an anatomical standpoint, which I know sounds ludicrous because it's a fictional character, but it's something to keep in mind. If you just have spikes coming out of everywhere, you know, I mean, it might look cool, but then when you have to draw it from another angle, well, there goes the cool factor. I also had made a series of brushes that I used for Godzilla's scales, and I didn't use them a terrible amount, at least in close-ups. I mean, there would be times where I would just be like, okay, I'm not getting the results I want from the brushes. I just gotta draw the scales out, and that was crazy. That was a nightmare. I wouldn't wish it on my my worst enemy, and it's one of the reasons why I ended up reusing a lot of art in order to get that strip done on time. Plus, I was doing a second weekly strip, which unfortunately I had to cancel. It was called Raphael Not a Ninja, and that was done in addition to Lucky Zilla. It was about a plus-size lesbian cartoonist who loves dogs, has a pet hamster, works for the post office, and never wears the same socks twice. I'm so proud of that strip. I love it. I wish I could still do it. There's just, unfortunately, not enough hours in the day. Some of this I can cheat on the tail because, you know, you try to picture Godzilla, you know, walking around with a tail that's, you know, kind of stabbing him in the back constantly as he's moving. I mean, that's got to be very uncomfortable. It's probably uncomfortable to begin with, you know, just to even imagine this stuff. But, you know. Okay. Oops. I also want to have another look here. Alright, there we go. I think that's a million times better. Let's see. Okay. You know, it'll work. It'll work. I'm gonna stop with this. Okay, let's save that. There we go. Here's what we got so far. It's not quite the pose that I started out wanting, but that'll do. I kind of want to redraw that hand. I've actually drawn Godzilla before on Drezen Draws. I'm trying to remember the episode. I think it was episode 25. It was called Kaiju Bless You. I spent on the whatever version of Godzilla I ended up drawing, which was a conglomeration of things. I mean, I started out wanting to draw 64, but it very quickly turned into Millennium mixed with God knows what the F. It was nuts. It turned out to be a near 3-hour episode. Excuse me. Love drops. They save your life. I think we need to get some new music. All right, there we go. Now let's have a look at these spines. Spines are extremely important. Now, you know, I need to redo some of this arm again. Yeah, same. I might actually trying to figure out which one I want to watch after this is over. I still got a little bit of wind left in me for staying up late and watching movies. I might not watch Gojira, but I might watch Son of Godzilla or Monster Zero. Monster Zero remains one of my favorites in the franchise. I mean, it definitely has, I think, the best human cast after Mothra and, of course, the original. Oh, yes. Blue Oyster Cult. I thought the remake of that song "Go Go Godzilla" for King of the Monsters was spectacular. Got 7 points on the spike, so The dorsal fins are easily the most complex items to draw, for sure. And that's something I had a lot of trouble with the first time around that I drew Godzilla. I was just kind of making the dorsal fins up as I went along, because that ended up helping me get through the piece. So you don't want to draw them too pointed, otherwise it kind of looks not organic. But you also don't want to make the fins too rounded, otherwise they start to look like a really bad leather glove, which is what that was turning into. So sometimes you just got to start all over again. And at the end of the day, you know, these are bones. These are exterior bones. That's what you gotta think of them as. I'm having a lot of trouble with this fin. So, what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna go for the bases. There we go. Now I'm getting start to connect the dots a little bit, and what do you got? You got a dorsal fin. So, how many fins did we say? We saw 7. Not yet. I mean, I haven't really ventured very much into, you know, the mythical fantasy stuff very much. Oh, that spine is not moving at all. I mean, there's always room for it on a future episode of Drezen Draws, so I wouldn't rule it out completely. I have drawn Lion-O from Thundercats. Loved drawing Lion-O. He was a real challenge, though, let me tell you. I mean, Bob Camp, who worked on Thundercats as a character designer and I think storyboard artist. At least his girlfriend has told me he gets a lot of requests for that when people find out that he worked on the show. I mean, with good reason. I mean, Bob is such a great artist, and he's also the co-creator of Ren and Stimpy. I mean, his work is worth picking up just for that alone. But he draws other things besides, you know, Ren and Stimpy. Yeah, Thundercats was in my lifetime, but I didn't grow up with it. It was, I think it would have been one of those shows that my parents, or at least my mother, would have been concerned about me watching because, you know, of the fantasy element and the violence. It really is honestly one of the tamest shows that I've ever seen, and it's great fun. The first time I saw it, I was just like, why did I not grow up with this? You know, you gotta be kidding me. I think I'm gonna add some pointiness to the dorsal fins just for good measure, because I feel like, you know, this guy could use it. Kicking myself because I could have picked up Doritos earlier when I was out with Steph, and I didn't. I don't know if she's watching this now. She's probably rolling her eyes at me. But you're saying this now, and you're saying this live. Yes. Yeah. Bob Camp makes just about everything good. And I mean, knowing him as a person, I don't know him as well as some other people do. My friend Thad Komorowski has interviewed Bob many times, and always has the nicest things to say about him. And Bob, I'm sure, has some nice things to say about Thad, because Thad is a genius. In my eyes. And he also puts up with a lot of garbage. Thoughts on Thundercats Roar? I don't have an opinion. I'm not gonna have an opinion. I mean, hey, to anyone who likes the show, hey, more power to you. It's something to watch. To me, I'm just trying not to be a grumpy old fart to hurt it. But that should sum it up, like, right there. This is going to be the long part, so if you need to make popcorn, go ahead and do it. And you also gotta allow for a little bit of variation between some parts of the anatomy in the face. And I say that because you gotta remember, Godzilla is disfigured by radiation. That's why he looks the way he ultimately looks. He's not a robot. He would be perfectly symmetrical and all that jazz, and he's not. So, if you feel like, you know, you maybe screw up on a drawing of him, I wouldn't really think of it like that, because, you know, I mean, perhaps, you know, that's just, you know, that's the way it works for monsters. Yes, I plan on posting the finished product, and this is also going to remain here on this page, and it's going to end up on my YouTube channel, where you can watch the other episodes of Drezen Draws. Thank you for watching. I appreciate it greatly, and your insight and your comments, and yeah. Be sure to follow my page to find out when I'm going live again. And I can tell you with certainty There is going to be more kaiju episodes of Drezen Girls. For sure. I mean, I drew Jet Jaguar, I drew Gigan, and I drew Baragon, and I drew Godzilla. So, I can't say when there's going to be another kaiju episode, because I have stuff planned out for the rest of the year, but it's going to come. It's going to come. I'm thinking maybe I'll do a Conan episode, maybe I'll do a Schwarzenegger episode, who knows. Yeah. Certainly. Thank you for your support. I found something underneath his neck that was interesting to me, but it was actually the joint that moves the jaw up and down. Ultraman's kaiju, so there's a chance. Although you can commission me for works that you don't see on here. Commissions start as low as $50, and you get a print you can hang on your wall. But yeah, that would definitely draw Ultraman. Who knows? Maybe in a future episode, I might actually do a two-parter on that. Maybe I'll do one episode Ultraman and Zone Fighter and other similar characters of that nature. You bet, Brian. I might even do a separate one that's monsters from Ultraman, Ultra 7. The derivatives. I might end up drawing Jiris at some point. For those of you who have no idea what I'm talking about, Jiris is essentially Godzilla, but with a frilly Dilophosaurus neck. It's the only way I could describe it. I mean, he looks like Godzilla because he was designed from the remains of the 1964 Godzilla suit. And he also breathed fire. And he had a similar roar to Godzilla. But of course he did. He was made up from the remains. But I felt he was defeated a tad too easily. But that's just me. There's actually a figure of Jiris that I could probably get for if I ever end up doing that episode. And that's only gonna come about if A, I get commissioned to draw Jiris, or B, if enough people vote for the dude. The rest of this I think I pretty much got. It's just a matter of filling out some other particulars. Also trying not to I just want to make sure that the stream is still live. Oh, yeah. That's fine. Scarlet Savage likes this post. I believe she is the moderator of one of the Godzilla groups on there. She always posts a lot of cool stuff. You know, I mean, there are fans in some of these groups that honestly have no business being on the internet because they behave like spoiled children. But there are those fans that, you know, just generally really cool people that always have something interesting to share. Like, I mean, Neo Monster Island is one of my personal favorites. He's always sharing something interesting, usually with one of his figures, like the 1956 Godzilla King of the Monsters figure. Doing something weird and ridiculous, and that might actually be the 54 NECA figure. Can't remember exactly. There's so many friggin' figures that it's tough for me to keep up. But I'm not always actively collecting them. I'm trying to pay off some debt, so you know I gotta take it easy a little bit. I have no plans of really buying anything right now while the crisis is on, because chances are I'm not going to get it for a while, number one. And number two, you know, I would rather just use whatever money I'm getting from unemployment to pay off my debts and have, you know, a nice dinner every once in a while from supporting a local restaurant. Honestly, I think the next time I plan to do one of these types of shows, I'm going to reach out to someone like a Steve Rifle or an August Rigoni or something. And of course, my buddy Chris is one of the biggest Godzilla fans that I know. I'm so sorry, Soup. I forgot about you. Keeping busy. Maybe a little too busy for my own good. I mean, it's like I wake up, I do what I gotta do, I sit and draw comics, I take care of stuff around the house, I make sure that the cats have something to do, because I live with 3 cats, and they're great. But I have to say, Bella is my favorite. I don't know about you guys and where you are all from in the world, but I gotta say, man, geez, the wind is like really howling tonight. I don't know how many of you have, oh. Sorry. I get distracted really easily, as you can see. Okay, so this live producer thing is killing me. It's not showing me how many people are watching, this, that, and third, and I just don't care anymore. If you're watching, great. If not, hey, you'll catch this on a replay. So. I want to give a special shout out to Onjikun, who is my lone Patreon supporter. I invite you to support me on Patreon. No pressure, of course, because I know we're all going through some financial stuff right now. But you can head on over to DrezenMedia.com and support me if you feel inclined. You can also commission me at DrezenMedia@gmail.com. Let me know what you have in mind. Pricing starts at $50, and it includes an 11x17 print or reasonable equivalent. Oh yes. Yeah, you're not too far away from me. Nah, don't feel guilty. I appreciate it greatly. I appreciate your friendship. I appreciate the support you've given me over the years. And hopefully I can reciprocate once things get a little better. There's, you've got projects that I want to support, and there's a lot of other projects that people have going that I want to support as well, especially someone like Glenn Whitmore, former DC comics colorist who colored a bulk of the death of Superman storyline. He's got his own hero, Captain Clockwork, which looks really, really good. He live streams a lot. I definitely recommend checking out Glenn. And let's also talk about John. John is on Instagram at Onjikun, which is, if you want to, John, in the comments, because it escapes me at the moment, put your Instagram handle or whatever on there so that people can find you. And John's very accomplished as well. Definitely consider commissioning him. I also want to give a shout out to the East Meadow Public Library and Kelly Gordon of Night and Day Anime for his kindness and the interview that I did a short while ago before joining in with you guys to draw this this behemoth. Make sure of something. Okay, alright, good. Now, just to give you a little insight, I'm drawing in Adobe Illustrator. Hi, Dick. I draw with a tool called the Blob Brush. Now, the Blob Brush is my tool in Illustrator. I mean, it's like you want to equate you want to be able to draw like you draw in Photoshop, this is the tool to do it with. Because, I mean, on one hand, you're drawing entirely in vector, which is great. And this is an Illustrator. So you can scale without losing quality, which is extremely important, especially important if you're going to be making prints, or if you do comics in general. It's good to have that flexibility. Godzilla, see why kids love Cinnamon Toast Crunch? Well, honestly, it's the taste you can see, so I don't see why not. Although, personally, I don't want to know what the hell Godzilla's gonna put on his cornflakes or Cinnamon Toast Crunch, but I can tell you right now, it is probably not going to be milk. At least of, yeah. Now I'm venturing off into strange territory. I don't know what Godzilla would put on his cornflakes. I feel like I almost should have made this a call-in episode, but it's a little late for that now. I kind of dropped the ball. I dropped the ball about getting super involved. I dropped the ball about the call-in episode. But that's enough for me. I don't want to screw up any more tonight. Well, Lord knows, I might be extremely tired after this ordeal and just, pass out, go to sleep, and forget which Godzilla movie I wanted to watch. Okay, so I got a bulk of Goji done already. Now, I'm just gonna roughly set up the segments on his tail for the final, because we gotta go and ink the dorsal fins. Whoops! Get up, you. I'm gonna put him over here. I kind of don't need the figure anymore because there we go. This is going to be interesting when I go back and do this stuff. This stuff I'm kind of just making up right now because, having drawn Godzilla as much as I have, I'm just like, no, that needs to be there because that's part of Godzilla. It just doesn't feel like Godzilla unless, you get the rest of the exoskeleton in there. Some of you may or may not know about this particular time where Dark Horse had the Godzilla license. Oh, and the things they did with it. In short, Godzilla versus Barkley. I did an internship about 7 years ago where one day I brought it in just for decoration because everyone else was decorating their damn office or desk. And I'm like, okay, they want competition? I'll give it to them. So I brought in my Godzilla King of the Monsters poster, the Raymond Burr version, and a few other things. And of course I brought in Godzilla vs. Barkley. And a lot of people are jealous. They're like, my God, where'd you get that? And I'm like, I got it as a birthday gift when I was like 12. Is this Cookie Monster era Godzilla? But this is King Goji. So it's prior to that. The one you're thinking of is the 65 suit. Which my friend Super says is a suit that is growing on him. Whatever that means. I mean, it's a goofy as hell suit, the 65, but there's still a charm to it, I think, as there are with most Godzilla suits. Even the 67 suit, as ugly as hell as it is, there's a certain charm. I still think it is by far the worst of the Godzilla suits. In terms of functionality, though, I think probably the worst has got to be GMK. Because, first of all, that suit, when you see it on screen, it is massive. It was built by a much different crew. It was the Gamera crew. I can't remember the director's name at the moment. It'll probably come to me later. Any of you are more nerdy about that stuff than I am, you can chime in with whatever kaiju knowledge you have that I might not have. But that GMK suit, man, on paper it's glorious. In execution, there are scenes where I'm just like, good God, Godzilla's got a neck like a giraffe, but, you know, the suit actor inside looks so effing uncomfortable. And I forget who played Godzilla in that film, but I think the character of Baragon in that movie stole the show. Easily stole the show. And there's promotional footage of her. Yes, Baragon was played by a woman in GMK. Put that in your pipe and smoke it. I just think that's great, you know, because you tend to think of Godzilla movies as, you know, something that young adult males will flock to, but let me tell you something. Girls are... There are just as many female kaiju fans as there are male ones. From what I understand, and I don't know her personally, but I've heard that Becky Cloonan is a huge Gigan fan. She did some work on the Criterion Godzilla set, illustration work. She's also very active in comics. She was the first female artist to work on the main Batman book, which was kind of revolutionary at the time, but you know, it shouldn't be. I mean, there have been women in comics as long as there have been comics. So let's be real. You know. Anyone that says comics is a man's business has no idea what they're talking about, because all I see is a bunch of talented people, men and women. I mean, Nick, you and I both know Layla. She draws, from what I understand. To what extent, I'm not 1,000% sure. I just know that she posts every now and again, and she's really good. And her kids are really good too. I mean, I look at her kids' drawings and I'm like, they gotta be what, like 7, 8, 9 years old, and they're drawing stuff that, you know, I wasn't able to draw as well at like 14. So, you know, in a way, I'm kind of jealous, but at the same time, it's like, hey, you know, I mean, that's how you learn. Oh yeah, Three Stooges, dude. Love the Three Stooges. Shemp is definitely my favorite. I mean, like any other fan base, there are the cool fans, and then of course there are the fanboys that aren't always the greatest, and sometimes they're just downright disrespectful, and you wonder why they even leave the house, or if they make their own bed. Ugh. But enough of those, because we all know a few. We all know a few. Yeah, man, totally. Okay, I think, where am I at now? How long have I been left? Hour and 16 minutes, it feels like 2 hours and 16 minutes. But it's okay, I'm having fun. You guys are having fun. I knew this was going to be a long episode. I hate to get rid of my pencils on this one, but you know what I'm going to do? Start coloring them in before we go in and add the scales, because the scales are going to take forever. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to create a map behind him. Because I don't want to go to print and then realize, okay, you know, I'm missing some stuff. What the hell? So for this, I'm going to move this back a little bit. I'm going to... Oh, I forgot one thing. You gotta convert this to be filled. Very important. So you're gonna drop the paint bucket in, and this is what ultimately sold me on exclusively Illustrator. You see how there's no like white pixels or anything? It's great. I love it. Shouldn't be terribly difficult to color him. The long part of it is going to be the dorsal fins, but you know that's to be expected. I have to admit I'm pretty happy with this, although at the same time I kind of wish that I don't want to sound ungrateful. I kind of wish that the Marvel Godzilla one, because I was curious about that version. I'm like, yeah, you know, I mean, the Marvel Godzilla gets a lot of flack because I guess either at the time or since people just didn't connect with it. Yeah, I'm sure Inkscape has very similar effect when it comes to paint buckets or filling or any of that. One of my friends, Sebastian, uses Inkscape. He's either using Inkscape or something else. I can't remember the name of it at the moment. What I gotta start learning how to use is Blender, because eventually my student license on 3D Studio Max is gonna run out, and when that happens, the sets in LuckyZilla are gonna have a problem. This part can be a little tedious. I mean, sometimes I just miss certain things, and that's inevitable. But I don't want to cheat and just be like, F it. Not too much anyway. Only use it, like, only cheat when you absolutely need to. This stock music sounds an awful lot like the Pirates of the Caribbean theme. Excuse me. That's going to be a problem. They gotta improve the blob brush a little bit in Illustrator. I mean, I keep in touch on occasion with a guy who has connects at Adobe. That whenever I have like a really serious problem with a tool or something Wacom related, because he teaches a course. I'm not mentioning his name right now because I asked permission, really. But you know, he's been really great with his insight, his knowledge. I think we gotta have like one more spine. Now, this is the part where I'm a little conflicted. As we see how he has a certain kind of shading on the spines. Now, I don't want this to take forever, but I think there's definitely an opportunity here. So, I'm going to make the outer dorsal spines a lighter color. Contrary to popular belief, Godzilla is charcoal gray and not green, with exceptions. Obviously, the aforementioned Marvel Godzilla and the what the hell do you call it? The Hanna-Barbera Godzilla. And Godzilla 2000. think this episode is gonna easily come to about 2.5 hours. So stick around if you feel like it, and there's no shame in ducking out if any of you need to. So you can see the final results in the morning. I still have this in my hand. I don't need it quite yet. This right here annoys me, so I'm gonna get rid of it. There we go. I don't know. Again, I'm conflicted. A little conflicted about how I'm going to present this. I don't know if I want to do the special shading on the dorsal fins. I'll probably abbreviate it only because, you know, I want to finish this. And also, you gotta be careful of one thing in Illustrator in particular, and that is, you know, how many vectors you have going on the screen at a time, and the complexity of those vectors. So the more points you add, the more it bogs down your memory a little bit. And that I think is one of the biggest shortcomings of Illustrator, but you know, Adobe is updating this stuff constantly, and while in some updates there are misses, quite frequently there are misses, but for the most part they know what the hell they're doing. And, I recommend updating as often as you can. I mean, hey, we all got work to get done. So, it's gonna be what it is. Oh no. See now, did anything kind of rub off? So that's one thing I worry about. See, stuff like this, when I adjust those vectors on the inside, it kind of messes this stuff up. So you just gotta be mindful of that before you go screwing up everything. Make his tongue a little bit lighter. So it's not quite bubblegum pink. And maybe we want his claws to be maybe not quite the same shade as the teeth. And also maybe not quite the same shade of gray as the as the dorsal spines. know that I'm gonna have as big of an issue with the scales on this one, because this is an earlier version of the character, for one thing, and they were still experimenting with the latex and what they could do with the suit and what they couldn't do with the suit. Let me see something for a minute. I know what I'm doing this weekend for sure. Cleaning out some of my closet. I was looking for a lamp I could use in case I do any more characters of this complexity. So this way I can study these finer details. To get that fine. Yeah. Also, I think I need a new keyboard. Might even need to change the batteries. This thing is not liking me lately. As you can see, in terms of the scales, I'm just lightly referencing the figure and going to town. Because unless I were to put this on a banner that is like 4 feet wide, let's say 10 feet wide by 6 feet tall, you would notice these details, but at 11 by 17, I would think probably not. Not that I'm worried or anything. I just want to make sure that the stream is still good. Which Wacom am I using? I am using the Wacom 22 HD. Scales, I think, are kind of the easy part here. It's just takes a long time because there's so many of them. There's a lot more in the face if you think about it. If you look at a Godzilla figure, like the head, it's got easily the most details, and it's got the most, at least in terms of the suit, the most points of articulation. It's a little too fine. Fine meaning thin. No doubt Steph and I are going to be watching Any Boy Meets World tonight. I'd like to. I think she's going to work a double tomorrow. And I'm here. I'm home. I don't have much to do except make comics and be a good housekeeper and boyfriend. I'm going to give my only piece of boyfriendly advice. Treat your woman like a queen. Because if she's in your life, there's a good reason for it. I mean, it is so hard to meet people in this day and age, and Stephanie, the greatest day of my life. She's gonna yell at me for saying that. Now, I know it looks like I'm skipping ahead a little bit, but I'm just trying to, map out, at least in my head, okay, I got this rhythm going on, but how is that going to connect down here? Is it going to connect down here? I want a certain level of consistency. Alright, we're doing alright. We were also watching Tiger King earlier in the evening, and I gotta say, there's some pretty messed up people in the world. If you've seen Tiger King, you might know what I'm talking about. I've never wanted to own exotic animals of any kind. I joke about wanting to own kangaroos, but quite honestly, I don't find any glamour in baby tigers or lions or any of that. They belong with their mother. That's just how I feel. If you're into that, well, you know, I don't want to take that away from you, but hey, you know, animals come first. The safety and welfare of animals comes first. It's gotta. Otherwise, you know, what's the point? You're just gonna end up with lawsuits and fines and whatever. A bunch of slaps on the wrist that often go nowhere. Like I'm doing much right now, but believe me, there's a lot going on in this piece. Careful here. I don't want his pecs looking like pork chops or anything. A little ridiculous. Even for my taste. Personally, I don't care if anyone's chops look like pork chops. Pecs look like pork chops. I'm not one to judge. Again, disfigurement, hold on. I don't want to make too many of the scales parallel until we get to the tail, because that's where they're at their most parallel, I'm finding. At least in ways that that look more, I don't want to say realistic, because I think that look realistic, but they look more like how it's supposed to look. References are very good for you. And I'll tell you something right now, I don't think I would have been able to do what I did here had it not been for this lovely NECA figure. If you're a huge fan of Godzilla, and even if you think the suit from King Kong vs. Godzilla is garbage, pick up the NECA figure. It may or may not change your outlook on the suit if you're not a huge fan of it, but it's a very well-made figure. It's not very expensive, but it is, like just about everything else in this world, a limited edition. And if you don't get it while you can, you're probably going to have to spend a crap ton of money on it later on. I'm just saying. Because I was lucky to get it when I did and for the price I got it at. Because it was $25 for the longest time. Then I saw it another place, it was $40. I'm like, screw that. And then I ended up getting it for $30 at the same place. The sale had ended. But I was fine with it. This will give you a carpal tunnel if you're not careful. One of the reasons why I took a break from using the pen to use the mouse. I think I got like really bad carpal tunnel when I drew Godzilla previously on Double D. It was a little over 2 years ago. Can't remember exactly when that episode aired, but it was season 1. And the episode went on for almost 3 hours. And not only did I draw Godzilla in that episode, I drew Sailor Moon. I mean, do you think Godzilla's difficult to draw? I know Godzilla's difficult to draw, but, you know. Dude, Godzilla and Sailor Moon in the same night? I mean, come on. You know it's going to be an all-nighter, or damn near close. Nakajima-san was still alive and doing conventions, then I would certainly give him a print of this at no charge. Because I love Nakajima-san. He was easily one of the all-time great stuntmen of the movies I've ever seen. Whether you've been here since the beginning of the stream or not, I appreciate you guys watching for this long and for understanding that this is not like a one and done kind of thing. I mean, you're watching this in real time as I'm drawing it. And originally, for Drezen Draws, that wasn't going to be the format. I was going to do the drawings, record the drawings, and then edit everything together and have like interview segments. But as I got closer and closer to the premiere date, I decided I was just going to draw it live, because it's good to have the interaction. Now I think what I'm going to do, if I can, just to save a little bit of time, is I'm going to break down and just make a brush. We also save, because that's extremely important. Oh man, that wind. You guys hear that? I mean, come on. Nope, that is not the right brush. There we go. Now let's fix these because those look a little inconsistent, I think. Now what we're going to do for that one is we're just going to fill it in manually. Same with right around here. Certain things you just have to do manually. It's inevitable. Sometimes there are shortcuts and sometimes there ain't. The denim brush. That anymore. And the rest you should do manually, just tapers off. Let's see, do I want the added torture of, doing the things on the spines? Well, sometimes you gotta learn, and I think the time to learn is now. And you know, okay, alright. I think I got this. I think I got this. Whoops. Well, I kinda got this. This neb on my pen is, I think, done after this episode. Let's see. We got about a dozen or so more spines to go. Spines, dorsal fins, spikes, whatever you want to call them. As long as we don't get into heated debates about them, I don't care what you call them. Ooh, boy. Really gave myself a workout on this one. I thought I drew Godzilla before. Never like this. Jesus. I think that when I'm finished drawing this Godzilla, I'll have to give myself a promotion. With apologies to Milton Knight. I know he had nothing to do with that scene. I don't know who had anything to do with that scene. It's kind of like the over 9,000 meme of the Sonic universe. That along with Pingus, but, you know, I haven't really expressed. There's an Ultraman anime. I have no idea. I typically do not answer messages when I'm doing Drezen draws, but hey, if it's important enough, if it's interesting enough, you know, I'll do whatever. I wasn't gonna do all of them, but I'll do enough of them. Oh yeah, there it is. And I think we gotta fix that tongue. That tongue is just, it's driving me nuts right now. There we go. Let you guys take a quick look at that. Man, oh man. That was a workout. I mean, the cheeks are slimmer than I anticipated. Oh, yeah. This feels like 62. You probably can't immediately tell, only because I'm a madman, and more often than not, I'm going for like 3/4 views. Some crazy like that. It's only a total nut job like me would go for something that's way more difficult. Yeah, but I mean, hey, we'll take one last look. There we go. There he is. So, if you like what you see and you want to commission me, it's drezenmedia at gmail.com. You can also message me on the page. I do birthday parties and corporate events. Normally I would travel, but of course, you know, we've got the situation going on in the world, so that's not happening that's not happening at the moment. I have a board game, Luckyzilla the Game, based on my webcomic. You can buy it at luckyzilla.com. As always, thanks for tuning in. I will be doing a pair of panels that I'm going to be advertising next week for May 16th and 17th. I'll talk more about that once we get into that, or you can check out the MCon Facebook page or the Drezen Draws page. Yes, I like to think I know my Godzillas, and that's come out of my love and respect for the character, and also it's come out of a necessity, because when I started wanting to collect the figures again, okay, what can I spend? So the 62 that I have right here, you could get for maybe about like $35 or less. More so if you go to the shows, because there's a bit of an upcharge there. You can't buy them direct from the manufacturer, because the manufacturer is a wholesaler, at least as far as I know. But, you know, NECA has licenses to a whole bunch of properties. They did some fantastic It figures. Both of the 1990 Pennywise and the 2017, which I have no interest in seeing the new It, but I have to say, NECA is doing a hell of a job on their figures, especially the Godzilla line. But of course, that's why I, gravitated towards NECA to begin with. Anyways, I've rambled on for long enough. I hope everyone is staying safe, staying home if you don't need to go out. I would like to think that we're going to get back to normal, but I have no idea when. Just do the best you can. You know, it's not getting any easier, but you know, hopefully these live streams are some sort of comfort for you, and they certainly are to me. Anyways, stay drawsome.